This is your host, Brendan, and you're listening to the Ordinary to Ultra podcast. Each episode, I bring in an ultra runner and ask them about their journey to their first ultramarathon, or their first time running a new ultra distance. We'll dive into why they started running in the first place, why they decided to run an ultra, the obstacles they encountered, and what it took to get to the finish line and beyond.
Dean Karnazes is one of the more prolific runners in this space, and he's getting up there in age. He's still crushing big things. He used to be huge in the scene about 20 years ago, winning races, giving Ann Trace a run for her money, all that jazz, right? But he was asked in an interview, he says, what do you think the average person, how fast can the average person run a marathon? And he responded with like kind of confusion, and he goes, well, that's an interesting question because average people don't run marathons, right? And that's something you got to remember is that, yes, a marathon, hundreds, 100,000 plus, I don't know, probably hundreds of thousands of people run a marathon every year. That's still a very small amount given the 8 billion people on this planet. So if you do that, like, man, remember how special that still is. Yes, almost everybody out there can do this if they wanted to. And if you're listening to this, it's probably because you want to. But what you're doing is not average. And so be proud of yourself for that.
Hey, everybody. Brendan here. Y'all are listening to Miles Victors. Miles and I met about 2 months ago. We met via a Facebook group. And man, am I glad that I met Miles. He's truly inspirational and an amazing friend. Spoiler alert, a few minutes into this interview, Miles is going to talk about his transformation story. Only about a year and a half ago, Miles was 450 pounds and since then has dropped to less than half that weight and has gotten into running and has run his first ultramarathon and has big plans for future ultramarathons. What a transformation. What a story. Yeah, you're in for a real treat today. A little more about Miles. Miles is 39 years old. He is from Eagle River, Alaska, near Anchorage. He lives in Herman, Utah today and has for the last 6 years. He has a wife and 4 kids and a dog named Bucky, who's a Great Pyrenees and Golden Retriever mix and eternally sheds. And Miles is a lover of movies. If he's not running, he is probably spending time with his family or watching a movie. And his favorite 2 movies are Braveheart, which is top tier, and Batman Begins, also a fantastic story. And without further ado, let's get into the interview with Miles. All right. Hey, Miles, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being here today, man.
Yeah, no problem. Happy to be here.
Awesome. I'm curious, have you been on any fun runs, any fun adventures of late? I'd love to hear about it.
Fun runs. Well, I mentioned to you a little bit before in other conversation that I did. I was trying to do a 22 miler or 23 miler up and over this snowed in road here in Harriman, but I got real sick. And after 3 emergency bathroom stops along the way, I decided I needed to turn back. So I guess that's the most memorable one in
that is
recent
memorable.
past. Yeah, it's not the most fun way to spend your wintry runs.
Yeah. Always bring toilet paper.
Yeah, always. Always. Toilet paper in a doggy bag.
Doggy bag. Oh, my goodness. I haven't had the displeasure yet of having one of those moments.
If you do this long enough, there's no doubt. Yeah, you will. You'll get good at it, too. Better than you thought you would. I used to be a hardcore backpacker and camper, and I'm telling you, I love going backpacking for weekend trips, but I would always bring copious amounts of cheese. And the reason why is because my theory was that if I plugged it up tight enough, I would never have to do that on these trips. And it usually works. But since I've become a trail runner, I've gotten actually really comfortable with just, hey, this is just a fact of life. I'm an animal just like every other animal out here, and I just got to do what I got to do.
It's a great point. You just gotta let it happen. And with
Yeah.
running, it's different. It just makes it happen. There's no
Yep.
stopping it.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's very memorable. Yeah, running in the snow too. Um, yeah, we went running a few weeks ago and you had some snow gators. I did not have snow gators, and I went on a run recently with a buddy of mine in my neighborhood. We went up the canyon, and the snow just it soaked right through my
Yeah.
socks and my shoes, and
It
they're
does.
Gore-Tex shoes, but the snow was just going down the top. So I
Yeah.
learned too, if you're running in the snow, anybody, this season, get some snow gators. Those
Yeah.
pay
I
off.
recommend the ones if you got, so I think it's I think Topo Athletic, Ultra, and I think Hoka. I can't remember, but I think Hoka
Mm,
all have gaiters that are made specifically for their shoes. I would recommend that
uh,
route over the ones that you can get from I think like Catula. Um,
yeah.
Catulas are good, but most of our trail and running shoes these days don't have any type of arch gap right there at the underside of your arch.
That's
And so
true.
that
That's true.
plastic string that goes underneath your shoe can get worn out awfully quick. Now in the snow it's not so bad, but when you're doing trail running out on the trails in the summertime, those things get chewed up so fast. So
That is really good advice.
yeah.
And I just got some Catulas, so I guess we'll
They're
see how
great.
long they
I think they'll be
last
fine for the snow. They'll be fine for the snow. I think that they just wear out they get chewed up real quick on the trail. So
on
I
the
bought a
trail.
bunch of extra straps because my other ones are toast. So I just have extra ones that I can swap in if I need to. So
Hmm. Hmm. Well, good. Good to know. Good to know. Should have grabbed the Hoka ones next time. Um, awesome. Well, Miles, let's head back in time. I want to talk about what got you into running in the first place. What was the motivator?
yeah. So my story is interesting. I actually in high school, I used to be really big into lifting, and running. I was very out of shape still, but went through this period where I got in pretty decent shape. I didn't run for fun. I ran for weight loss. But I enjoyed it okay. I wasn't very fast, but I would put in maybe 10, 15 miles a week, running alongside all my weightlifting stuff, for weight loss and body composition, stuff like that. And then I
Hmm.
got really out of shape again. And then I got into running, I don't know, 12, 13 years ago. I was following the relatively resurgent trend of the vegan runner style. So I read Scott Jurick's Eat to Run book, and I read, the China study, and I watched that movie Forks Over Knives and stuff, and got really excited about that. I got into running pretty decent. I could run, 10 miles at a time, maybe up to a half marathon and stuff. And then went through some kind of mental health crisis stuff and started gaining weight about 12 or 13 years ago. And then I got really, really, really heavy. Quite heavy, quite unhealthy. I was about 450 pounds and could barely move, had all sorts of joint problems, had to walk with a cane. It was kind of a mess of a situation. And um, I decided I needed to take control of my life, long story short. And I started losing weight. And along the way, I started moving more and I kind of found a love again for walking and then eventually for running as a tool to get in healthier shape. And then I started just getting reminded every time I went on a run how much joy that freedom of movement is. And so I just started going deeper and deeper and challenging myself more and more. And pretty soon I'm signing up for trail ultra marathons and I'm pacing friends at, the Wasatch 100 and I'm, spending whole weekends out in the mountains, running up and over peaks. So, yeah, it's just kind of
Wow.
infectious.
It's such a stark contrast when you were at your low, 450 pounds. Did you ever see yourself getting this far?
Oh, my body was so broken at the time just with the pain that I had and the mobility problems that I had that I just wanted, when I started my journey, I just wanted to be healthy again. I wanted to have some
Yeah.
form of health, whatever that looked like. So no, I couldn't really imagine a world where I could really run ever again.
Yeah.
Because at that point I, used a cane and could barely walk a couple thousand steps a day and was in just
Wow.
terrible, terrible physical shape. So no, wasn't on my radar at all.
No. But yeah, look at you now. It's incredible what the body can do. Like I went running with Miles. I'm telling you, what 3 weeks ago or so, and man, Miles is cruising through the mountains. This is that's incredible.
Yeah, it's been quite the journey. I weigh less than half of what I weighed then. I'm sitting around the mid two teens, so like 215, 216, somewhere in there.
Hmm.
And yeah, feel so much better obviously, but then just having the ability to run and move whether it's in nature or on the roads even. I don't even mind running on the roads too much.
Hmm.
Um I don't know. I think the best word that I can use for it is just I get filled with gratitude. Um, it's a very humbling thing to know where you started from and
Uh-huh.
where you are now and not really like the effort that you put in to get from A to B, and yet you also don't really understand how those pieces fit together to allow it to happen because of how bad off I was, when I started.
Right.
So I'm not sure uh, why I got so lucky when a lot of people aren't, but I'm really grateful that I can do what I can do, and I can do it with as much joy as I can do it with.
Eh, What was this what was what am I trying to say? How long did this transformation take when you were at your low till now? How long has it been?
Yeah, so it was only February 7th of 2022 that I weighed 450 pounds. So for those who are not listening to this in real time, it is December 14th of 2023.
Today, yeah.
So today, so yeah, it took about a year to lose most of it. I want to say I was probably sitting around 250 pounds, somewhere in there, 240, I think, around
Hmm.
the year mark. So this last February. And then I've just really slowed down because I realized I just was just finishing up a trail racing series, or not trail racing, a road racing series in Salt Lake around that time and gearing up to get ready for some trail half marathons
Hmm.
in June. And I realized that as my mileage was increasing, I was finding a lot of little aches and pains. And I
Hmm.
realized it was probably because my calorie deficit was too severe. And
Hmm.
so I started adding a lot more calories in. So the weight loss really slowed down after that. But then it kind of
Hmm.
stabilized in, you know, late summer where I'm at now. I haven't really lost
Hmm.
a whole lot of weight since then. But yeah, so it took about a year and a half to get it done. And I've been sitting here at where I'm at now for probably 3 or 4 months now.
Man, that is an incredible transformation. Incredible. Um, I'm I'm curious what role your races have played in your story and your motivation. I know you've done several races. Sounds like you've done some like half marathons, marathon races, and now you're getting into these longer ultra distances too. But what's the purpose behind the races, do you think? You said you run for uh, out of gratitude and it just feels good. But why do you run competitively, I should say? Is it for the to like win? Is it just to see how far you can go for yourself? Like, what's your motivation?
Well, it's definitely not to win. So I'm not nearly fast enough to get there. My goal in every race has always been well, every race since I became a real, what I say, quote unquote, a real
Real.
runner, right?
Uh-huh.
Has been always a finish in the top 50%. And recently it's been in the top 25% is what my goal has been.
Let's
Um,
go.
yeah, and I've been able to do that recently, which is good. But the big driver for races for me, I use this analogy of a map. And when you look at a map, you can see the entire lay of the land from that top-down view. And in order to use a map effectively, you have to know where you are, and then you also have to know where you want to go. If you can't identify those two places or those 2 points, then it's really difficult to make good use of your time and energy, right? You're just going to wander around. So I use where I want to go and waypoints along the way to get there as a method of measuring my progress, and helping me to get from ultimately my A to B. Now, my end goal is kind of a shifting goal. 1 month it's this, 1 month it's that. Currently, I would really love to either race in, this is kind of a vile race to a lot of people these days, but I want to run the UTMB out in Chamonix, France. Now, UTMB as a race organization has got a lot of heat recently. I don't know if that's changed my ultimate goal or not. Another one that I really want to race is the Moab 240. So those are a couple of my big goals. And along the way, I know that I need to hit some other milestones along the way. And so I use these other races as stepping stones to get there. And the benefit of them is one, the effort required is known, right? You can read up about it. You know how far you have to go. You know what your time limit is. You know what the elevation is. You know what the terrain is going to look like. So you can plan for all of that. And so that's A. And then B, you know when it is. So you have a discrete time that you have to get ready for it in. And what that does is it puts bounds on the effort or the preparedness that I need to have by when. And those 2 things really help me focus in on what I need to do to crush it, to do what I need to do. So that's what service the races do serve for me. Plus, they're like, I don't have to bring as many snacks. I don't have to pack as many snacks because there's aid stations.
Yeah, there you go.
So yeah, it's nice that everyone else is carting all the water and the candy out there for me.
Yeah. I spend $100 on the race, but they do give you snacks. So,
and if you eat enough, you can almost make that money back.
That's kind of true with how expensive these gels and hydration stuff are these days.
Yeah, I don't even.
Yeah, I just bought some hydration tabs and was like, oh my goodness, like $30 for like 40, like that. That could be a month's supply if I was running enough.
I stopped doing that, man.
But,
I kind of,
yeah.
I have salt shoes. I use the what are they called? The salt licks or salt something? I don't know. Salt sticks. I don't know. It's basically these tiny little chewable tablets that have a bunch of electrolytes and sodium in them. Yeah, and they taste pretty good. Like the peach flavored, I think is my favorite. They're not super expensive, which is nice, and so I'll take those just with regular water, because I don't like buying the expensive drinks. And then with food, man, those goos and honey stinger waffles and all that stuff, they can get wildly expensive. And so I'm now like 100% fueled by Oreos, Pop-Tarts, Swedish Fish, and Payday, fun-size Payday.
That's right.
That's my jam. And then those Costco fig bars, like Fig Newtons, are also good for that stuff too. So that's what I do because the calories per dollar is so much more effective that way. So
it's fair. And you feel fine running on these. I think, maybe some naturalist folk out there would be like, well, you're just eating a lot of candy, but yeah, I see what you're doing here. Like it's still calories, it's still sugar, and that's going to turn into fuel. So, and for you, like no problems, your stomach's fine. Like
I've done some challenges for myself that have helped get me to this point. One of my favorite things that I did during the summer is when I really didn't have time to get up into the mountains, I would do what I called a gas station crawl. And it's where I would hit up all the gas stations and run from gas station to gas station. And I had to eat something at each one. They couldn't be healthy. It had to be really like gnarly food. So it was like a deep fried taquito at one and a donut at another. Once I got a small bucket of popcorn at a holiday. Terrible running food. Just an awful running food. This salty popcorn. Oh, and I also didn't let myself bring my own water bottle. I had to drink whatever I could get there. And so quite often that was a mixture of, alternating between Diet Dr. Pepper or a Gatorade or something. Anyway, that experimentation hardened my stomach up quite a bit and made it so I can virtually eat anything at any time on the run now. And I recommend pushing your body's digestive system if you're going to be doing this sport. Push it on those training runs because that's how you get your body used to the variation and whatever the trail might throw at you during the ultra marathons.
Jeez, that is creative. I love it. That is so, that's fun, honestly.
Yeah, my first one was I called it the Tour de Maverick, and out here in Utah we have these Maverick gas stations, and
Oh
so I
my
strung
gosh.
together like 11
Yeah.
of them all together. It was like a 17-mile run or something that I just bounced from one. We have a lot of them out here. If there's
Uh-huh.
11 of them and I could get to them in 17 miles, that tells you how many there are.
That's a
And
lot.
yeah, it's a lot. And just one to one to one to one, and just ate something at most of them. So
And here in Logan, where I'm pretty close to, we got two Mavericks across the street from each other, so that would be
yeah,
a good run for me. Just run across the street,
yeah, Mavericks
grab
and
donuts
holidays.
at each.
Yeah. Yeah. And those donuts, they're high calorie. If you want to max out your
Heck
calories,
yeah.
man, those are like 300 or 400 calories, those apple fritters and stuff.
Oh, I know what you're
Or the
talking about.
raspberry fritters. They had the
Those are
raspberry fritters at
big.
Maverick. Yeah.
Yeah, they got some good food at Maverick. If y'all are in a different state, don't know what Maverick is, I think Maverick's kind of Utah, maybe some of these other western states, but Maverick is the place. It
It's
is the
Utah's
best gas
Buc-ee's.
station. Yeah,
Yeah. It's Utah's
that is a
Buc-ee's.
good comparison. Bucky's. Um, all right. So we talked about some awesome fueling fun.
Hmm.
Um, I'm curious when you first heard about ultra running, like when did that first get introduced to you? That, yeah, the concept
Yeah.
of running more than a marathon.
Like I said, about 12 years ago or so, I did read Scott Jurick's book,
Okay.
Eat to Run. And so
Okay.
that got introduced to me then. I also read the book Born to Run back then. And that actually started me on understanding a little bit about proprioception and footwear and, kind of not buying into the whole super maximalist shoe trend. Um, and that really helped me out in a lot of ways, both running and just in daily life. Um, and I read Dean Karnazes' book, Ultramarathon Man, back then, as well as reading Rich Roll's book. What's it? Is it just Ultraman? It's when he does those ultra triathlons where he does the like double Ironman races and stuff. Anyway, so I got introduced about 12 years ago to all of that, and then kind of that's always been something that I've now known about for the last
Hmm.
decade plus. And when I started running again, I remember it's funny you went on that cruise just recently,
Yeah.
and it when I was starting to run again, I didn't really start running until about October of last year, so a little over a year ago.
Okay.
Um, and I started running on the cruise ship. Like I actually hit 5 miles on the cruise ship during one of my runs at port,
Uh-huh.
and that's when I was like, "Holy cow! Like I could do this." And that's when I started thinking longer distances, and that's where kind of the ultra marathon idea started germinating. And it wasn't
Mm.
until late winter this last year, early spring, where I started thinking, "Nah, I can do this. I think I
Hmm.
can."
Um, I just wanted to say it's kind of funny that this occurred to you on the cruise ship. I found that running on a cruise ship was hard. Being that we live in the mountains, it's pretty dry up here, high altitude. Running on the cruise ship down in the Bahamas, man, it was humid
Yeah.
and it was like hard to like people think it's hard to breathe, and it is hard to breathe when you come to higher altitudes from lower altitudes. But the equal and opposite was true for me. Going down
Yeah,
to
it's the humidity more than anything, I think. Because
yeah.
when I went down to so we sailed out of Galveston, Texas, and it was in October, and I remember how it felt running up here in the high desert area, in Utah where we live, and dry, high elevation. And when I started running, I felt like a superhero. Like it was unbelievable how easy and effortless it was when I was running It was like 6 a.m. I remember running not on the boat, but outside of the hotel there in Galveston and running towards the port. And I was a superhero, you know? And then the humidity hit me and it was like, that scene in the Avengers where Hulk grabs Loki by the foot and just smashes him back and forth on the ground. That's
I
how I
do.
felt like the Texas humidity did to me. It just
Yeah.
crushed me. I was done. It was unbelievable how quickly that
Dang.
happened. And so, yeah, the cruise ship was a very interesting experience. I actually learned to appreciate running on the cruise ship very early in the morning, like at 5 a.m., would be cool enough that it battled the humidity quite a bit. And then if I was running during while the boat was moving, that also was beneficial, but that wasn't always possible because how early they get into port sometimes. But
Yes.
but yeah, definitely the trick there was super early in the morning, especially if you were at port.
Right. Definitely recommend if anyone here is going on a cruise soon. You know, I used to make fun of those people that were running on the cruise ship. Like, guys, just take a
Same.
break. Like, what are you doing? Go to the freaking buffet. What's going on? But no, no. I felt like I needed to run during that time. It's you just get the runner's high, you get addicted to it, and it just feels good. And you want to keep your training up too. It's like if you take a week off, it can really put you back. It's a different world
Yeah,
when you're actually the guy running on the track.
we're just a bunch of addicts is all we are. Like we're just this morning I'm getting old. I'm 39. I know people who are listening to this
I
will be like,
know.
dude, that is not old, right? But I feel old. I'm 39, coming on 40 here in a couple months. And I'm lucky if I make it past 10 p.m., every night. Like I am so tired by then. And last night I didn't go to bed until like 11:10. Like
Oh man,
super late for me, right? I'm like,
watch
oh
out.
man, I'm like a college kid again. And and so this morning I woke up and my body was like, no, I don't want you to go run this morning. You're gonna stay in bed and just like fart around on Instagram for a while or whatever. So that's what I did. I was grumpy all day until I
Oh,
got out on early afternoon run, got about a little over 5 miles in, and got my dopamine hit, my endorphin hit, or whatever you want to call it.
you're hit,
And then I was okay
man.
after that. And it's routine's good, but it just set the point home that I'm just a drug addict. It's just a drug that my body makes when I run.
Yeah,
And
it's cheaper.
either, yeah. So I either got to be okay with that. Yeah, or stop running, but I'm probably not going to stop running. So I'm just going to have to be okay with the fact that I'm addicted to the endorphins that my body makes.
Yep, accepted.
Yep.
Same. Also, that's so fun. Okay, so you realized, heck yes, I want to run an ultramarathon. While you're on this cruise ship, you're like, I could do this. This is doable. What I'd love to hear more about the training that led up to your first ultra, and also what was your first ultra?
Yeah. So my training, I realized that I didn't know enough to make a really strong program for myself that um, would keep me from getting injured and that would also get me to where I wanted to go. Right. I needed somebody to get me going and start mapping out my course from A to B. At least to the first several waypoints until I could figure out this whole navigation thing by myself and start charting my own course, right? So I actually signed up for a service through a group called 80/20 Endurance. And they have a coaching system there for triathletes, for cyclists, for long distance swimmers, for runners, for pretty much any distance. And so I signed up with them, and it comes with a Training Peaks plan, and it's cool because it basically will put everything on your schedule for you. It'll tell me what day you need to run, what distance, and how hard you should be running. And the cool thing is that it syncs automatically with my Garmin watch and will create structured training programs on my watch that then will beep at me if I go too hard, too fast. It'll tell me the intervals I need to run. It'll let me know when the next section is coming so I know how hard I need to run. Anyway, it was very, very useful for me. So that's how I kind of structured my training, was based off of that. And then it wasn't until summer that I started feeling really confident to where I could start rolling my own and um, going off of weekly mileage and elevation gain and stuff like that, and trying to structure in, the standard running structure of at least 1 to 2 long runs per week, with 2 speed sessions mixed in, whether that be hill repeats or a tempo run or a fartlek or, whatever. And then the rest of them
Hmm.
long, easy runs. And I'm a streaker. I'm a run streaker. So I run every single day. So just kind of finding where to put some of these efforts in. Throughout the week. Anyway, that's how I started getting there. I ran my first ultra distance on, I want to say it was July 8th of this year.
Hmm.
I made my own course. Basically, it was a bunch of loops around a trail system just south of where I live here.
Hmm.
I called it the Black Ridge Ultra because it's right around the trail system by Black Ridge Reservoir here in Harriman. And I ran that, and that sucked because the night before the race, I got influenza. Or
No.
well, it was that day I started feeling the symptoms of influenza, and it was
Uh-huh.
that day that my father-in-law, who I had just spent the week with,
Yeah. Oh
tested
gosh.
positive for influenza. And so by the time I woke up Saturday morning, full-blown flu, so sick. And I am stubborn enough that I said, screw it. I've been training for this long enough. I'm going to see if I can do it. And if I can't, I can't. I did it. It took longer than I wanted it to. It was hotter than I wanted it to be. And I was way sicker than I thought I would ever be. And then I did that in about, I want to say 7 hours and 45 minutes, somewhere in there. That kind of upper end of 7 hours.
Yeah.
And
And you
that,
went
that was tough.
50K?
Yeah,
What was the
50K.
distance?
Did a
Yeah,
50K.
okay. Great.
And then the whole following week I was recovering from pneumonia. So
Oh my
that was
goodness.
cool. Um,
It progressed to
but I kept my streak alive
pneumonia.
through all of that.
Oh my
So
goodness.
I kept going.
Oh
Um,
man.
yeah, so that was my first unofficial ultra. And then I did a couple distances close to that, 20s. And my first official ultra was the Dead Horse Ultra, November 18th of this year in Moab, where I was able to run that one in a swift 5 hours and 23 minutes, knocking, a couple hours off my time. Felt pretty proud about that, and finished not quite 25th percentile, not quite the upper 25%. I was like 26 or 27%, like just
Ah,
barely missed it, but it's all right. Still,
close enough.
still very quick. And I
Yeah.
was very happy with that. I beat my estimated time by a full hour. So that was good.
Jeepers. Um, wow. And you weren't sick for
I
this
wasn't sick. No, I
yeah.
got sick the week after, but I
Oh,
wasn't
oh
sick
my
during.
goodness.
So
Jeez. Man, that whole pneumonia thing, that just sounds nuts. And you got pneumonia pretty much because you pushed yourself so hard
oh
during
yeah.
a flu and then
Oh
it
yeah.
just destroyed you.
It
Oh
is
my
it is
goodness.
one of my more David Goggins moments that
Yes.
I can't really like endorse for most people. I don't think that's wise. If anybody else had
Uh,
asked me, Miles, should I run this distance? I would say, it's probably not a good idea. But I also am my worst. I'm my worst patient. And so I'm going to do all the stupid stuff. So do as I say, not as I do.
there you go.
Um, you know,
I love it. I love comparing yourself to David. Oh my goodness. That's funny. Yeah, if you don't know who David Goggins is, look him up. Um,
he's very
and
inspiring. But I
yeah,
would not,
get
after you get pumped up, after you get motivated,
yep.
take a step back and say, okay, but where really should the limit be, right? Because that's the wise thing to do. But again, we're kind of us ultra runners, we invite the pain. Part of the challenge
Yeah,
is the pain.
we kind of all are David Goggins to a certain point.
Yeah, to a certain point. Some people are smarter about it than others. but dang it, if I'm not saying who's going to carry the boats and the logs. I'm saying that in my head as I run down the trail half the time when I'm, hurting. They don't know me, son. So,
Oh man, I love David. He is fun to listen to. He will pump you up, which is needed sometimes. Yes, don't destroy yourself. Um, Man, that's awesome. Uh, this 50K, I'm curious. After you ran this 50K, did you feel like you'd had this amazing accomplishment in your life, or maybe you'd done so many races this just felt like another one, and you immediately were maybe planning your next step? I don't know. How'd you feel after this race?
I don't know. I was super, super proud of myself that I was able to beat my time the way I did. That said, it wasn't. I don't know. I had imagined coming up to it, the official 50K, that I'd just be like crying and so proud of myself and like, oh my gosh, transcendence, I made it. But
Yeah.
it didn't feel like that. And
Hmm.
I don't know if it's because I had already registered for, all my next races. I don't know if it's because I'd run, you know, over a dozen races in the last several months, total just of all different distances. I don't know. I don't know what it was. I was super happy. My daughter, my 11-year-old daughter, is the one who put the medal around my neck, got it from the lady at the end, and that was kind of cool. And I was also mainly concerned at the moment because about 15 yards from the finish line, my left hamstring said, I'm done, and just seized up. And that was kind of fun to deal with in the moment because that was a lot of pain. But yeah, I don't
Whew.
know. It wasn't like this amazing I made it experience. I don't know if it was like I got to imagine the reason why is probably because I have so many races on my calendar right now that are harder, that I think my
Yeah.
brain kind of nullified out some of the shorter efforts, which I don't think is realistic. Like I think that my honestly celebrate the wins,
Hmm.
celebrate the big moments. Like finishing my first official 50K, that was worth being so super stoked about, and I was super proud of myself. I think I should have been a little bit more emotional and proud of myself, in hindsight.
Isn't that interesting? Uh, I feel that I connect with that. I haven't run my first ultra yet. I haven't run a marathon yet. That's in a month for me. My first half, I did my first half marathon, and my training for that, I had already run a half marathon. I in training was like, I want to know if I can actually get there to the finish line. So I like went out for my training run, my long run, and I wanted to do a half. So I did a half, and I was like, wow, okay, that's what it will be. Maybe without some of the vert or some of the in the yeah the same vertical climbing, but that was it. I did the half marathon, and at the end, I didn't feel that crazy or incredible. And part of me thinks maybe it's because I knew I could do it. Like I did
I
it.
think that's it,
Yeah,
you
do you
know.
think? I had
Well,
done it already, and
yeah.
it kind of took maybe that took the special pizzazz out of it. And I've heard from other wise people who are also runners, like that's a good thing. Like when that happens to you, that means you trained right, and you showed up to your training, and the maybe the principle is it's journey over destination for any Brandon
Oh,
Sanderson fans.
sure.
Journey before destination. The journey is more important than the arrival point, and really that's where we put all the work in. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I still wish I felt that, but
I think here's the thing. I think that the problem with you and me, Brendan, is that we are part of a community, even though, you haven't done your first ultra yet, you're still part of the ultra community. And that community has absolutely normalized insane efforts,
Mhm.
right? That's the problem, is that we're part enough of this community, is that we're watching people like Courtney DeWalter, we're watching, Andrew Glaze, we're watching, all these amazing runners who are just incredible at this sport just crush 100, 200, 250-mile races with smiles on their faces, right? And so we know that it's possible, and we've watched enough of this, and we've studied, we've become students of this sport so much that we realize that a 50K, a half marathon, a marathon, a 50K, a 50 miler is like, well, yeah, these are stepping stones to the bigger one. And I think we do ourselves a disservice because of that, right? Because if you take a step back and you go to who you were 4 years ago, 5 years ago, a year ago, these things weren't normalized to us yet, right? These were
No,
insane achievements. But
it's
because
true.
of how deep we get into the research and the prep and the ideas and the community that we surround ourselves with, it can be really easy to start making these things feel normal. Now, I know that is actually one of the goals that you have for this podcast and for kind of what you're doing with this community is that
Exactly.
you kind of want to normalize it because people think these are impossible tasks. They only think they're impossible tasks just because most people don't do them. Most people aren't kind of nutty enough to do them. But in terms of physical capability, the human body is capable of amazing things. Your human body, yours not meaning Brendan's, but whoever's listening to this, your human body is capable of enormous tasks. And you don't know it yet because you haven't dared to dream it yet. But the reality is it is. And so I guess my caution that I give to you, if you're listening to this podcast, is probably because Brendan, you know Brendan, or you're aware of this community that Brendan's building, or you're into the ultramarathon scene, or you're interested in it. If you're listening to this, don't fall into the trap of normalizing too much the amazing things that you're capable of doing, because you don't want to miss out on the gratitude that I think Brendan and I are telling you that we sometimes feel like we miss out on when we complete these distances, because they're things to be proud of. Even though we've normalized them, they're still amazing achievements. Dean Karnazes is one of the more prolific runners in this space, and he's getting up there in age. He's still crushing big things. He used to be huge in the scene about 20 years ago, winning races, giving Ann Trason a run for her money, all that jazz, right? But he was asked in an interview, he says, what do you think the average person, how fast can the average person run a marathon? And he responded with like kind of confusion. And he goes, well, that's an interesting question because average people don't run marathons, right? And that's something you got to remember is that, yes, a marathon, hundreds, 100,000 plus, I don't know, probably hundreds of thousands of people run a marathon every year. That's still a very small amount given the 8 billion people on this planet. So if you do that, like, man, remember how special that still is. Yes, almost everybody out there can do this if they wanted to. And if you're listening to this, it's probably because you want to. But what you're doing is not average. And so be proud of yourself for that. Sorry, that was my little tirade
Don't
here.
you dare be sorry.
But
That was
yeah,
perfect.
nothing average about what we do. So definitely find opportunity to take joy and feel super good about yourself for your accomplishments. But also know that there is no, I'm realizing more and more there's no real upper limit. Yeah, it's kind of wild what the human body can do. And while the difficulty of running that 50K that I did, as fast as I did for me, that was huge for me. It gave me a very healthy respect for the distance and said, oh, you can maybe go for the 240-mile Moab goal a little bit slower than you thought you needed to do it. You can take a little bit longer because that was really tough to do that as fast as you did, which you just did 50K.
Mm-hmm.
It also told me that, oh yeah, you can do things that you didn't think you could do. And there isn't an upper limit. You just have to prepare yourself for it, but you can do it.
Wisdom. The lesson that I just learned, I think too, is when you finish that race, that half marathon, that marathon, put yourself back into the shoes of the person you were when you started.
put yourself, put Miles back into his person that he was before he started his health journey at 450 pounds with it could hardly walk. Like, what would that Miles say about the Miles that just ran a 50K? Like, oh my goodness. And for me, the me who could hardly run a mile without getting like tendonitis. When I first started running, my shins and my ankles would swell and hurt, and I could hardly run a mile. Now I run 6 miles on my regular run. I need to put myself back into the shoes of that first person, that the beginning of the journey. And what would he say?
He'd be probably hella proud of you, man.
Exactly. Exactly. I'd be proud. So maybe that'll help me feel the feelings I should have. Awesome. I don't think I think that's where we need to leave this off. That was perfect. Miles, thanks so much for your wisdom, for just your story. Everyone's got their own story. Your story is amazing and unique to you. And I appreciate you being so open today and sharing that with us. And hope some of y'all today are feeling inspired by Miles' story. Miles, if you want, I know you do some things on the side, running, training. Do you want to talk about that at all? I'd love to have you mention what you do if you'd like, or not if you don't. But
yeah, I've got kind of a side gig going on. It's not really off the ground too deep yet. I do have a podcast out there. It's called the Beating the Statistics podcast. If you want to give it a listen, go for it. It's free. I actually also have recently started group coaching on group calls. You can find more information on that if you're interested by going to beatingthestatistics.com. Again, that's beat as in like I beat you up, right? You're trying to beat the statistics, and the whole premise of that is that only about 3% of people who are overweight and really unhealthy in their body composition and overall health are able to make any reasonable, sustainable change that has any longevity to it. And I'm hoping that the things that I can help provide to people through the podcast and through some of my group coaching is help them to beat those odds. That you can either be a part of the 3%, or we can start turning that 3% on its head and make that number a little bit bigger. So yeah, those are my two things I'm doing. Again, the group coaching really isn't super off the ground yet, but please feel free to listen to my podcast. It's available. I'm also on a couple other podcasts that I've been a guest on. One is Luis Escobar's Road Dog podcast. Luis Escobar was the photographer and one of the main characters in the Born to Run book. And then also I have been a guest on the Cultura Trail Running podcast, which is largely an East Coast podcast, but a great group of people out there. If you're interested in some good podcasts that are about trail running and trail runners, can't go too wrong with Cultura and with Road Dog. But yeah, beatingthestatistics.com. And there's also links to my podcast there too. And I'm on pretty much every podcast platform out there.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Miles. Check him out. And hopefully we'll have you again down the road, see where this journey takes you.
Yeah, hit me up anytime. And, when I'm up in your neck of the woods next, up there in Logan, I'll hit you up for a trail run. And every time you're down here, come run with me.
Yes, please. Thanks again, Miles. Talk to you later, man.
Cheers.
Hey, Brendan here. I just wanted to thank you for listening to today's episode. As someone new to ultra running myself, I found these conversations to be super valuable, and I hope they are for you as well. And if you want to know when the next podcast episode comes out, make sure you subscribe to the show. And one last thing before you head out. I'm thinking of putting together an online community for new and aspiring ultra runners, and I'm wondering what you think about the idea. There's already several Reddit communities and Facebook groups out there where we can go ask any question we have related to ultra running, but I'd like to create something more tight-knit than that. I'm thinking a small-ish group where we can put our upcoming races on a race calendar, so we can support each other towards those goals and maybe find inspiration for our own upcoming races. We can post wins. We can find more easily other people that are in a similar stage as us. I found it difficult personally to find other runners that are working towards similar goals, especially when it comes to ultra running, being that there's just less of us out there. So I think that could be really helpful. And I also think it could be fun to have these community members hop on at the end of a podcast episode and ask interviewees questions about their ultra running experiences. So if you think this idea is interesting or could be helpful to you, I'd love to know about it. Go ahead and go to bit.ly/OTU community. The link is in the description as well. And drop me your email in that online form. If I get enough people that are interested, I'd love to make this community a reality. Well, thanks again for your time and for listening to this episode, and we'll catch you on the next one.